I went to the North Pole 10 years ago. The photos, I'll just leave on and talk over them, because once you've seen one lump of snow, you've pretty much seen a lot. And so I'll leave that for you to look at. If there's anything in particular that you're interested in, do remember it, and I'll come back to it at the end. In terms of the timing, I'll try and speak for, well, as long as I think you need, but obviously it'll be a very, very whistle-stop tour through the trip. So any questions at all, please ask at the end. Please feel free to ask. Why did I go is interesting in that I don't know really. I just went. It seemed like a good idea. There's a couple of reasons that I've thought of, were that I had a girlfriend at the time who left me and said she was more sporty than me, which is probably true, but I was quite annoyed that she'd managed to pick it up. And so that is one reason why I went. And then also I was a bit bored at work, so I thought, why don't I go on a trip instead? And I wanted to prove that I was physically able, really, because I'm as blind as a bat, so any sport involving a ball I'm useless at. So I thought, yeah, this is quite a good trip to do. And it was 5 weeks, so I fitted it in the work. In terms of preparing for it, it was really get as fit as possible beforehand, and if possible get as fat as possible, but unfortunately I was unable to put on any weight, or by a few ounces. In terms of getting fit, it was quite funny, because I used to drag tyres with me, and I lived in Winchester at the time, and I'd walk around the hill at the bottom of the road, and I'd go at the same time, so I knew the people who were there, and I met them all pretty much every day at around about 6 o'clock, and they all totally ignored me, because they looked at me and saw my following tyres and just sort of ignored me. Whereas one of the other guys was actually was the same, dragging tyres around, going around Richmond Park, and he got stopped so often, normally by women who were asking him what he was doing, that his then girlfriend actually insisted on going with him just so that she could fend him off. And I found it quite amazing that was it just shows you that was London and I was in Winchester, but never mind, that's how it is. Anyway, we flew out to Resolute Bay, which is in Canada, the most northerly part of Canada. And we were there for a week before we actually started the race, just acclimatising. It was a bit of a shame, because actually the weather then was very good, or for there was very good, and so we didn't get to practice all of what would happen in a storm and stuff, which would have been nice to know when I got a base camp nice and near, because I was bound to get it wrong, and it would be nice to know, but alas, unfortunately we had to wait till the first leg before we found that. While we were acclimatising, although it was on the whole very good, it was very cold at night, and there was one night in particular, it was the second night, and we put our tent up, but we were going to be sleeping in the hostel again, and I realised that I'd left my hat in the tent. Well, I looked outside, it's only 20-30 yards away, I'll just go and get it. So I sort of put on all my stuff and got ready to go out, and there was a 5 or 6 year old Inuit child there who was looking at me thinking, what on earth are you doing? And anyway, I went out and just thought, oh, silly child. And but no, I then found out what he was looking at. It was freezing, and I rushed to the tent and got my hat. But by then I'd actually I could feel that my ears were burning, which is frost nip, which is not serious at all and very minor in term, very easy to cure. But it was quite incredible that occurred in 20-30 yards. And what it did do is it taught me that yes, you've got to do everything properly. You've got to make sure you've got the right kit and just go with it, really. So that was the acclimatisation, which was, as I say, it was a shame that it couldn't be a bit, we didn't get any nasty weather, but that's how it is. The first leg was our pride and joy, mainly because of me, but there was no doubt that we were not a good enough team to win the race. But we had but we were tacticians, and me in particular, and I decided that the first leg was the leg that will go and try and win, because what will happen on the first leg is that everyone will go nice and gently and slowly, and just to find out what's happening. And actually the first leg, it's not really a question of how fast you go on the ice, but how long you spend on it. So as long as we make sure we got up earlier and we went a bit faster than they did, then theoretically we should win. That was the theory, and we started off, but the weather was atrocious. There were whiteouts and blizzards and everything. One day we were going along, and it was okay, but it was getting cold. And then all of a sudden, the wind came in on us, and we couldn't see where we were. It only lasted probably about a minute, but I looked around, and Alex, who was in front of me and I thought would be there, was actually over there, and it was quite alarming, that. And of course afterwards we all sort of got together and found out where we were, and Charlie said, do we want to put the tent up? And pretty much, I don't think he'd even finished the sentence and we'd already got the kit going. I mean, it was absolutely abysmal. But that was there, and then the first leg should probably have taken about 3 days, because it was 55 miles, but the weather was so bad it actually took 4, and on the third day we sort of reached a stopping point, and we knew that we were there or thereabouts with the others, because although it should have taken 3 days, but it was the same for everyone, so they'd had the same problems. So we thought, right, well, tomorrow we'll get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and just go hell for leather, leave about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and just hope that none of the others do, really. Anyway, that was the theory, but I was feeling a bit odd the night before, and then 2 o'clock came, and because I was the cook, and the reason I was the cook, because I couldn't carry as much as the others and go at the same pace, so I did a deal with them, not that they had any choice, which was, I'll cook providing you're prepared to take a bit more in the sacks, which was fair enough. Anyway, 2 o'clock came, and I got up and I just went to the back of the tent, and I was sick everywhere. Now the good thing about the North Pole is that when you're sick it freezes immediately, so there was no smell or anything like that, so it was fantastic. But it did mean, I had a problem then, and I decided, no, I'm just going to go back to sleep, and I woke up again at 3:30. Now I don't know why this happened at the North Pole, but every time when I was slept out on in the tent, I could guarantee I would wake up every hour, and it was exactly an hour and a half, just look around and then go back to sleep. And I don't know why that was, but so anyway, I woke up at 3:30, and this time I thought, right, I have to get them up. So I got them up, and we started going probably about 5 o'clock on the last leg, and I was getting dopey, and I didn't really know what was happening. And at one point, the other two people sent me on ahead while they discussed tactics. Well, that's what they said. Subsequently, I found out they were testing me for hypothermia, because they were worried that I had actually got it. They say they think I had it, but that it wasn't too bad. So anyway, because of that, they carried on, but they sort of tucked me up in the middle of the team, and they just sort of followed it through. So we carried on towards the first checkpoint, and we got the reference, and it said, right, it's this bit here, and we were there at the top of the hill, and it had gone. We had no idea where the checkpoint was. We thought, we checked our references, we checked the books, and it was definitely at the right place. So Alex said, well, why don't you, David, stay here with all the stuff, I'll go that way, and Charlie can go that way. Anyway, within a couple of minutes Alex had found it, and he rushed back and got us, and we sort of strolled back into the tent, into the main checkpoint, and we were the first people. which was absolutely marvellous, because there's no way we should have won it, and particularly the state I was in. And there it is, the first leg, and within half an hour two other teams had arrived, and within 2 hours a third team arrived, but we were the first, so there's nothing they can do. They can never take that away from us. And that was my pride and joy as far as winning it goes. We decided the next bit is on the second leg, which was a proper leg, and it was 120 miles. It was very much the main one of the race. We decided, well, let's go along. We'll try and keep up with the other people, and if we can win it, fantastic. But if we can't, well, we can't. But the leg itself was for us, it was an absolute disaster. I don't know why that's there, but never mind. It was an absolute disaster. But we went on, and anyway, I don't know why yeah. Anyway, as far as the second leg was concerned, the first is, to start with, we were doing very well. We got everything that you wanted, and we were just keeping it just a little bit ahead of the other people. But yeah, so we were going on, and we were sort of keeping up without any real problem at all. But then, well, I'd been ill on the first leg, but on the second leg someone else was ill. Alex was ill, and we thought, and he really was bad, and actually had to stay in bed for the entire day, which in a way I was obviously quite annoyed with, because it meant that we couldn't go out, and we had to stay in the tent. On the other hand, it was really quite nice, because it meant he couldn't push us anymore about winning the race, because actually we couldn't. Having spent a day in bed, we were going to be 24 hours behind everyone, and there was no way we could catch that up, which is how it is. And also, it is actually quite frustrating spending a day on the ice in the middle of nowhere in a very small tent, because yes, you can go out, but you've got to have all the kit and do everything with it, so you don't really want to. So it was a bit disappointing, but that's just how it is, and there's nothing you can do about that. Of course, once we set off again, it meant that we were racing purely to get there now. We were no longer worried about whether or not we did it as in time or not, because it didn't matter. We lost the race. So we did this, and then on the fourth day, one other person we got some very bad news. Actually, it was very sad. We were going along, and one of the other teams, they'd had to shoot a polar bear, and to this day it still sort of upsets me, but that's how it is. And the reason is that they woke up in the middle of the night with a polar bear actually out the tent, and so they were unable to, because of course you try and shoot in the air above it, but they were unable to do that. So they unfortunately had to actually shoot the polar bear, which was devastating really, and it upset those two immensely. And one of the things that happened, though, which I must admit I found quite amusing, although it was very upsetting, was they rang in to report that they shot the bear, as you're meant to, and the person turned around and said, well, is it male or female? And I said, well, how on earth do they know? I mean, they hadn't looked, they just had to shoot bear. So he said, well, how big is it? And they said, oh, it's probably about 5 foot, maybe 6 foot. So the guy goes, oh, okay, well, it's probably a female, in which case you can just leave it and wait for people to come. But it could be an adolescent male, in which case mummy and daddy are out there looking for it. And we suggest you get 5 miles away from there at least, as soon as possible. Which, 5 miles from a tent that's fully erect is some going. That must have taken them a good sort of 3 or 4 hours, and well, they survived, so that's all that really matters. But it was quite funny, because once we were there at the checkpoint, and of course we knew they were safe by then, so they were then saying, they then for the race reported this and said, well, we ought to get a discount for the time that we spent in terms of the bringing up and everything. We of course didn't care because we'd long since lost the race. But I thought, oh, what cheek. And I actually said, well, actually, surely you should get dogs time, because that 5 miles I would have done in 2 seconds if I'd got 2 polar bears chasing me. So surely you should be dog time. But I don't know what happened actually, but it was quite amusing. So that leg sort of effectively just dragged on really. But we got to the checkpoint and we thought, this is odd. What on earth has happened? How can we miss the checkpoint? And we checked our references and we actually walked past it. And I don't know how we managed to do that, because they're not big, but they do stand out in the middle of nowhere. So how we managed to miss it, I don't know. And we actually came in from the mountains behind rather than actually coming in from the valley below. And of course that amused everyone, but that's just how it is. And also, whilst we'd been on that leg, there was one time in particular, I'd got back in the tent, and there was something wrong, something wrong with this hand here, and I've got a tiny bit of frostbite on this finger, and it was very much a tiny bit of frostbite. But we did what we meant to do and rang in and told them about it, and they frankly didn't care less. But they said, well, the doctor's going to be at checkpoint 2, so go along, see him there, and just check out that there's nothing untoward. But it doesn't sound as if there's anything untoward, and I knew that there wasn't. Anyway, so I got to the checkpoint, and I thought, oh well, I'd better show the doctor my hands, just so that he can just check that it's okay. And he looked at it, and Alex jokingly said, oh, is this David out of the race then? At which point the doctor turned around and said, oh yes. And I was, what? And we were I was busy thinking, all right, well, what can I leave? What do I need to take? And he goes, oh no, not this David. No, I thought you were talking about Tom in the other team. And because unfortunately there was one guy from the other team who'd on leg 1 had frozen those 2 fingers together, and then he froze them again on leg 2, which is that's very, very dangerous to get them frozen again. So and I think there are a few other things, so he was pulled out of the race. Actually, incidentally, on him, his duty of the team was to be responsible for putting the gun on his sled. And we knew what happened for the polar bear. You need to have a gun out there, and you need to make sure that you've got it. One day on leg 2, apparently he sort of just realised that he didn't have his gun anymore, so his whole team had to turn around and follow their trail back as far as they could until they found the gun, which I think was about a mile. Now I don't know what was said to him, but I know what they said to me afterwards, and they weren't overly polite about it. And to be honest, nor would I be, because actually going back would be soul destroying. I mean, that would just devastate you to be going back in your tracks. And apparently the weather was absolutely abysmal that time as well, which of course it would be. But they found the gun, which is the main thing. So that was leg 2, which we knew was a tough leg. Then we started leg 3, which actually was very nice. It was very enjoyable. Leg 3. It was a bit shorter than leg 2. And it, because we were going in April, it was getting later on. It was actually getting comparatively warmer, so it was very nice. On the start of the race, leg 3, we were all there, and I don't know what happened, but I got my sled behind me, and I was here, and the organiser fired his gun, and we all went off again. I went through, walked a couple of steps, and thought, this is odd, and I don't know what happened, but my sled has stayed where it was, and I was moving on quite happily without it. It's a little bit embarrassing, and obviously there were a few rude comments about it later on. but it only took a couple of minutes, and actually it was quite nice because the others had all smoothed the ice for us in front, so maybe it worked, but that's just how it is. So we went on, and we were in touch with two teams a lot all the way through. We were we'd go ahead, and then when we stopped for a bit and they'd go ahead, the two teams were way behind us, and there was a sixth team which were the two doctors, and we couldn't see them at all. We didn't know where they'd gone, and I was speaking to the others about it, and I said, well, they've cottoned on, they've realised now what to do on the ice, and they're going on, and you can guarantee that when they go, they are going to win by miles. And it was a little bit disappointing. Had we known what we knew now about leg 2, we'd have told them what was going on in leg 2, but because we wanted to win leg 2, we didn't tell them that at the checkpoint, and unfortunately they were mucking around too much. But they cottoned on to this now, and they just disappeared. But that's how it is. But we got to the 5th day, and it had been a nice day, to the point that actually Alex had taken his waterproofs down and was actually topless, which I found quite amazing. And certainly I wasn't going to do it, but Alex managed to. And we were 14 miles from the checkpoint at our normal stopping off time. Now 14 miles is probably about 6 or 7 hours, so it was really frustrating because we didn't know whether to go for it or whether to hold back. Anyway, we decided that we'd stop and have lunch, because that's dinner, that's the thing to do. And we thought, we'll have dinner, we won't put the tent up completely, we'll sort of just have it up, and then come dinner we'll decide whether or not we're going to go for it. And which fundamentally it was my decision, because I was the weak one, and there was no doubt the other two wanted to. And I didn't really know, but I thought, yeah, why not? Because it's beautiful weather, and we'll go for it. And it actually proved to be my personal highlight, really. The reason being is it was lovely weather, and it was beautiful, and I hadn't really seen the pole at night before, because we'd stopped, do some stuff in the tent and put it up, and then I'd be out, and I didn't hang around. So it was lovely to see it at night. And this photo here it's a photo that I took, but it's of Charlie, who's in our team, and the thing that's really important about that is that it's dead on midnight. So you can see that the sun has gone down, and it's but equally you can see how we were quite happy moving and travelling in it. So that was the highlight of the third leg, and we actually arrived at the checkpoint at round about 4 o'clock in the morning, and of course everyone was fast asleep, so we just recorded where we were and went on. But that was fantastic as far as I'm concerned. And then the fourth leg was very much a question of, it's a very short leg, it's to make sure that everyone arrived at the same sort of time to take them back. And it's a question of, right, you're going to go there one day and then there the next day. The two that were still racing took a view that they'd go through the night, but we looked at it and thought, well, there's no point, is there? I mean, we can't win, so we may as well just take 2 days and be quite pleasant about it. And one of the teams that wasn't racing had the same view, so we said, right, we'll walk with you. And we walked with them for the first day, and actually passed the phone over to the organisers when we were reading our checkpoint, our figures in. They said, oh no, Alex is here, and he passed us across. But the next day they were more alert and awake than us, and they woke up probably an hour and a half ahead of us, and they came and said goodbye, and we were sort of like just getting ready, and they went off. So we were fine, see them, we'll see you at the pole, thinking that they would beat us by absolutely miles. But this is where the weather can play a cool trick, or a kind trick, depending on which way you look at it. But they got absolutely snowed in, and actually there was a valley that they went through. The snow came into the valley, and they had to put their tent up And of course, once you put the tent up, it takes an awful long time to put it up completely, fill it in, and then take it back down again. By which point we've come along and said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And actually, the weather had sort of completely bypassed us, and for them it was. They were absolutely right to put the tent up, but we didn't get the weather at all. So actually we beat them to the pole, which was quite amusing really, but there we go. So, and as a result of that, we arrived at the pole, which is what this photo is. And this photo to you probably means nothing at all, but to me this is fantastic. And this is the pole. Now, believe it or not, I'm in there. You can see these are definitely my gloves because they're full of snow and far worse than anyone else's, and I'm sort of there in the middle. But that was us as a team, and it was great for a team to reach the pole, because these two guys I only knew through that trip. I didn't know them before, and I haven't really met them. I've met them a couple of times, but not really since. And I've been asked now I've been asked, do I think I ought to ring them and contact them? And actually, no, I don't. It was quite nice to think of them as the North Pole, and then that's it, and don't worry about it. So that was very much a whistle-stop tour through my trips. If anyone's got any questions, please ask. But I've sort of tried to just give you the highlights, really.
Any questions?
What was the trip? The race, but who ran it? What was it?
The race was it was organised by Polar Race. It was organised by Jock Wishart, who is very much a proud Scotsman, but he organised it through Polar Race. There were 6 teams in total, between 2 and 4. The 4-man team, they lost one person, so there were 3 that made it to the pole. But yeah, it was his race, and it was to the magnetic North Pole, and he had helped in identifying where the magnetic North Pole was, and I think it was the 1999 version that we went to. But
how long was the race? Or something?
Sorry. How long was the race?
Yeah, how many miles was it?
It was. If we'd gone in a straight line and done everything properly, it would have been 320 miles. We think we probably did about 340, because obviously sometimes there were hills and things, and also we weren't that fantastic with sat-navs and things. So, but yeah, it was that sort of distance. And the race I took was very much a soft race. It was getting, I took a race that would have 4 legs, so that I had 3 checkpoints to get refitted out, really, and it also lowered the amount of stuff you had to take, because of course you only took it until the next checkpoint. So what was your question?
I saw somebody waved a flag of a charity. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah,
was it sponsored stuff?
It wasn't. Having said that, I did realise that there would be a lot of people who would give me money because of where I was. So what I did is I raised some money, but I mean, it was no way that the event was sponsored for a charity. And in fact, actually, if a charity tried to sponsor it, there's no way they would have made enough money. I ended up raising about £7,000 for the Anthony Nolan Trust, but they were very much, this is what I'm doing, will you sponsor it? And to be honest, I made no effort to sort of chase them up, really. But it would have been wrong not to say to people, look, here's a chart, this is what I'm doing, do you want to sponsor it? But it wasn't the race.
David, what sort of loads were you having to pull in terms of weight?
On leg 2, which is the biggest leg, and we obviously had the most fuel and the most food, our team of 3 the team load was around about 280 kilograms, so that was really very much at the peak, and then obviously it went down as you went on. So 90-ish. Now, what happened is the reason I was a cook was because for me to take a third of that, there's no way I could keep up with the other 2. So they took sort of 100 110, and I had sort of 50, 60, 70, depending on how I felt the day, really. The two-man teams, it was slightly worse because they still had all the kit, and the food and stuff was left. Two-man teams were around about 200 kilograms, so they took 100 each. But yeah, there were those sorts of weights.
How did your team come together? It sounds from what you say as though you didn't know them before.
Yeah, I mean, what happened is I was actually at a leadership event in Basingstoke when I heard about it, and I've been thinking about it for some time. And they just said, well, if you want to come, put your name down and then come along. So I did. This was in December 2003. And there were a couple of people who already had their teams and they knew what they were. But most people actually didn't know who they were going to go with. And we'd go on training sessions roughly every month, maybe every 2 months to start with. And come June, we had to say, right, these are the people I want in my team, and these are the people I don't want to be anywhere near. And it so happened that I was very lucky because the two people that I wanted to be with, Alex and Charlie, both said, yeah, I want David and Alex or Charlie, depending on who they were, and I don't want to be with the others. So actually I didn't say that, but they did. So we formed a three-man team on the back of it, which, as I say, is why in a way I'd like to meet them again, but in a way I don't, because it's actually quite nice knowing that they're there, and I don't need to know what's happened to them because they went to the North Pole, and that's all I need to know about them.
Yeah. You said at the start you weren't very sporty, but there must have been a minimum requirement of fitness before you were allowed to do this.
I don't know actually. They say they were being assessed, and certainly at the time I thought that we were being assessed. But the first question I got when we had an interview was, how are you going to pay for this? And I'm pretty sure that got me through the sportiness. Actually, to be fair to him, Jock was very good. He said that, if you want to go to the North Pole, you will get there. He said, because there's no way you won't get fit and you won't do anything. And he's sort of right. I mean, there are obviously some people who had illnesses and stuff that weren't going to get. But the fact is, once I was on the ice, I had no choice. I had to keep going because it was actually easier and more efficient to meet someone at the next checkpoint than it was to sort of phone up and go back. So between checkpoints, you really just had to keep going. You could, if you wanted to, drop out at that point, but you always felt, that'd be wrong, wouldn't it? I mean, there's no way I would be able to drop out. If I was ill or something, that's fine, but there's no way I could just drop out. John?
Just quickly, you said at the beginning that you couldn't have put on weight before you started. If you wanted to, you just didn't put on weight. Did you lose a lot of weight over 340 miles?
It was quite funny actually, because we all got weighed beforehand and afterwards, and I got weighed. Everyone was going in and they were losing a stone or a stone and a half, even 2 stone. I think one person lost. I got on the scales and I'd actually put on an ounce, and the reason being is that, actually sort of a bit more muscle had appeared from, I'd managed to turn some fat into muscle. So I actually put on weight, which was fantastic, and I think I'm still the only person who's actually put on weight on the trip, but I don't know.
You showed some photographs of frostbite. I mean, so the kit that you buy or you're given, I don't know.
Yeah, given, yeah.
I mean, it's by no means foolproof then. I mean,
no.
You get the frostbite by being careless, or?
Well, you do actually. And what had happened is, we hadn't thought about it at the time, but what happened is Charlie had been going along, and Charlie fell over because he was walking along and he was going past some snow ice, which is ice that's just formed funny shapes, and normally, of course, around them they've got a bit of a crevice because it's scooped up. And he was going along and his sled had fallen into this crevice and it fell over, tipped over, and he fell over. So I was just behind him, so I just helped pick him up and just put the sled up, and off he went. Hadn't realised that I'd actually got a very tiny bit, or quite a big bit of ice inside my glove. At which point, of course, it just kept freezing up, and then the sweat of my hand would be enough to melt it again, freezing up, melting it, and I ended up with frostbite on the top of these 2 fingers,
A bit of ice getting you.
which we think is because of the ice. Yeah, we don't. It could be anything else, but we think that's where it came from.
Is there any long-lasting effects from this?
No, well, I haven't noticed it. It's quite funny because I had a stroke a couple of years ago now, and it was interesting that I've obviously lost control of my temperature anyway now, but they did get affected first, but I don't think there's any really, certainly until then there's nothing that made me think, oh, I know, I've got to watch out for that.
How did you get back from the pole? Presumably you didn't walk out again.
No, and this of course is the real difference. We flew out, so it took 3 weeks of travelling to get there and about 2 hours to get back. But and you do wonder why I just didn't get an aeroplane out there in the first place. But and of course that is the problem, is that you get that. I mean, I did some research, and before I started I was reading people's guidebooks and things, and I read Peary's guide, as he was the first to get to the North Pole in 1910 it was, and it's just amazing how he had to think a whole totally different set of rules to what I did. So I don't say to anyone I'm an explorer at all, because I'm not. I just happened to be a traveller who went to the North Pole. But no, compared to what Peary did, there is nothing like it, no comparison at all.
2 questions. First, what was your staple diet? And the second was, did you sleep in the same clothes as you walked in?
Okay, the staple diet was quite interesting actually. There were 2 choices, but it was porridge of a description for breakfast. Whilst we were travelling, we had a goodie bag of all sorts of sweets. It was fantastic actually, because I love the sweets, and they were all there, and chocolate, and it was fantastic. And we had a full sort of I've forgotten how, it was a kilo's worth of that chocolate every day, and sweets and things. And then we had our staple diet in the evening was we had a soup when we first. Well, we had a cup of coffee or hot chocolate. It tended to be hot chocolate when we first got in. Then we had soup to start with, and then the next course was we had 6 or 7 choices of different army freeze-dried food, really. But it was fantastic because it was just boil in the bag, pour. It was round about 2 cups worth of boiling water onto it, stir it, and then that was it. And to be honest, I probably would have eaten anything, but they were fantastic. And particularly had one that was meat and potato flavour, beef and potato, and it was superb. And in the end, because obviously we'd worked out all of the orders and placed them and everything. And of course there was quite a lot of stuff that we weren't going to need, because we'd bought a lot of stuff in case we were stuck on the snow and things. So at the end we actually had a bit of a play around again, and it was beef and potato, beef and potato. So but yeah, it was perfectly good food. And the second question, did I sleep in the same clothes? To a point. Obviously the clothing was all about layers, and I wouldn't sleep in the waterproofs because obviously you're not, and you wouldn't want the second layer up here as well, because that would just be too hot. But in terms of the underclothing, yes, very much so. I always had sort of they were Helly Hanson's sort of thermal tights, and then a top which I wore every day. The gloves I usually wore as well. But what was quite interesting about when you were sleeping was the other stuff you had in the sleeping bag with you, because you'd have all the normal, you'd have all your clothes and stuff, but then you'd also have batteries for the sat nav, or matches to keep them warm, and you had to keep. There was amazing the amount of stuff I had in the sleeping bag with me. Yeah.
Okay, David, thanks very much. That's a fascinating description of your visit. I was particularly interested to hear about your food and your explanation that it was delicious. Thinking back to my days with army rations, they were called MREs, which were supposed to be called meals ready to eat, but after 3 or 4 weeks of eating the same food, they were renamed meals rejected by Ethiopia. but that was really fascinating. I'm going to call upon John Nice to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the club.
A very short one, because you've taken away any jokes I might have thought of.
I'm sure you can think of something.
Yeah. I think I said to you, David, that I thought I'd have to listen very intently to have enough to speak to you about and thank you for. And last night there was a super program narrated by David Attenborough about the Arctic. Oh, brilliant. Watch this. But it was Downton Abbey's last episode. Since my wife is in command of the television now, I didn't say the same thing. But that was terrific. They filled in an awful lot of gaps. And I learned a little bit about you too, because I think you're probably the first, I'm sure you're probably the first chap in my life who has unashamedly and unselfconsciously told a gathering like this how damn glad he was every day to get his leg over. And I mean, I felt that occasionally, but it's been ages. But it really was fascinating, actually. And I'd love to sometime, if you'll bear with me, have a look at the shots you had on the screen.
Don't quite know what happened with them, but never mind.
Very well before.
Yeah.
But great. And can I tell everyone that I think you're writing or have written a book on this?
I'm writing a book. It says I must get it out soon, but because it's funny, I didn't really think about the North Pole very much up until 2 years ago when I had the stroke, and then I thought, well, actually I'm glad I've been to the North Pole. And also now that I've got the book, I've decided, well, North Pole is in itself quite an amazing story, but also so's the stroke, so I'm going to write a book covering the two, really. And it's sort of finished, but not quite. So hopefully I can get that out in the next sort of couple of months.
Have you got a working title for it?
Polar Stroke.
Polar Stroke.
We'll get a few signatures for you and have a little campaign.
Excellent.
I'm sure a lot of people would like to read it after hearing that. Thanks very much, David. Super. And we all get...
Thanks.
So in closing, can we all be upstanding for the final toast?
Oh yes, thank you.
Rotary the world over.